Hey, welcome to the Camino Show. On this episode, Jeffrey Yefsky joining us all the way down from beautiful, sunny. I'm about to be jealous because it's going to turn where I'm at, San Diego. And may have to do a few more remotes down to San Diego because, boy, it's always nice. Every time I've been down there, it's just gorgeous. Jeff, man, great to have you on the show today, buddy.
Thank you, God. Thank you very much, Otis. Kim, it's great. Appreciate you inviting me and deciding that you want to be jealous of my current location, but at least to have a few minutes of my time, I really appreciate be able to come in and participate.
That's right. I might have to change some requirements for background, in the future for some of these things. But people are in like, oh man, I wish I was there, sort of thing. You got to have the window open and show me. But hey, Jeff, man, I'm curious. The whole thing with the government. Why? I mean, you spent a career in the Navy, and then you decided, I love the government stuff so much. I want to stay in that space, man. Tell me, and I didn't mean to be insulting,
No.
but I want to know what was that thing that's like, man, I want to do this.
So for me, career's mostly been a supply corps officer. So started out as an enlisted box kicker, SK3. For an Army guy like you, that means absolutely nothing. But it was an E4, basically working in supply, logistics, that aspect. Did the crossover in 06 to become an officer, walked down that line. The whole thing is I've also been a tech guy for my entire life. And I got sucked into really analytics and business analytics and walking down that road. And so when my first company that I had been working for, basically was in that space, I kind of got sucked into continuing down that road. And then in this second company that I work for, which is dealing with performance measures and analytics, you and I were talking about this earlier, I kind of got sold a half story about actually moving one step up the river that basically says, hey, now I'm going to influence the actual decision makers that are walking through the analytics and understanding. And so the idea of helping government agencies, government organizations improve the monotony and the ridiculousness that both you and I have experienced for decades was both exciting but also rewarding, because those that are road finally get seen for being retired on active duty. It's a Navy term. Retired on active duty, being shown that, hey guys, you're either stepping up, you're stepping out, and be able to try and make improvements, kind of appealed to me. And so that's how I ended up where I'm at today and walking down this road. So it's an interesting road, I have to say, though.
Is that is that where your entrepreneurial bug came from with that? Because so many entrepreneurs, it's all about problem solving, and I'm sure from different people we've talked to, there's plenty of times in the military where you were looking at things going on behind the scenes, or the bureaucracy or anything like that, where you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many better ways that we could be doing this. And then mixing that with your business analyst background, is that what drove you towards entrepreneurship, just that problem solving aspect?
I think I'm one of those famous few that actually came in early on, ended up coming out, had a 13-year break in service, got into that aspect of learning and working for a couple of organizations. Mm-hmm. As everybody, a lot of people that are like myself, 9/11 happened, and all of a sudden I dropped new papers and joined back in. But that seedling on entrepreneurship was planted way young in my life. Grandfather used to own an upholstery company through World War II, supporting government agencies. Grandfather one. Grandfather two was an aeronautical engineer who was in charge of the Mercury, Apollo, and Saturn missions. He was literally in charge of the capsules. Side story for a second. When the U.S. government decided to let Yuri Gagarin come in and tour the capsule, my grandfather says not just no, but hell no. It came at that time, it came, and he literally fought tooth and nail all the way up through the directorship to the director of NASA, who literally said, Norman, this is a PR run. He goes, what can I hide? He goes, whatever you want, because the guy can't get into it. He can only look in it. And if you put black stuff over it, or black sheets over it, he's not going to know any better. That was the negotiated deal to let go, let this Russian cosmonaut look inside his capsule. So when you talk about that type of entrepreneurship, those seeds were planted multiple years early in my life. But being able to bring entrepreneurship and innovation along with my military career, that's probably one of the main reasons why I rose up through the ranks so quickly. Where I had commanders and captains that basically had must promote, early promote on most of my fit reps all the way through my career, because they're like, I have to wait this period of time to get him to his next advancement. I can't just pop him up I can't want to place in, hey, he needs to be promoted now. I can't do that. I have to wait a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever the requirements are. And so that was why that's where you get the fusion of basically wanting to do government service and entrepreneurship and showing up in innovation. Only in the last 5 or 10 years, really, as the military actually started to truly embrace innovation, as opposed to letting, you can want to say, the overall industrial machine come up with an idea and then they go and walk through that process. And so it's pretty awesome, actually, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, the Army, at one point, I remember hearing something about Army Innovation Command down in Austin. I know the Air Force has done it. I haven't heard what the Navy calls theirs or even where it is, but I'm sure, if the Army and the Air Force got it, I'm sure the Navy's got to have theirs.
Yeah. And the Marines. Oh, sorry for my, I'm not kicking my devil dogs, but the Marine Corps kind of just, they're the ones that are kind of like they get the broken toys from basically everybody, but then again, they're the guys that probably have the most ingenuity, because they can take 4 or 5 broken toys and turn it into a pretty darn impressive item on a shoestring budget or whatever budget they're given. But yeah, pretty much all 4 of the branches, and I think that's really coming down to a large number of. I'm gonna kind of call out the Vietnam vets. They're the ones who kind of, because they're currently, a lot of them are sitting in that chair at that point. As you know, a lot of military people continue to serve not not in the uniform, but more in, then they transition over, you want to say, into the tie. I'm going to just leave it at that way. They move into the tie, and they kind of recognize you got these newer generations that are coming up with technology and innovation and desire to move stuff. And they kind of go in and say, something, I know what my predecessor did. I don't want to do that. So let's go and let these guys do whatever they want, to an extent that they don't go in and start tearing down the structure, burning down the house, basically. And let's see what they come up with. And I kind of like that. And I think that innovation and entrepreneurship as a whole, as we all know, the government takes between 7 and 10 years before it adopts anything. I think it's starting to actually get to a point where it starts saying, okay, what do you guys got? Let's see what we can do. And I feel like that the business world is starting to see more and more of that from us vets, because of the fact that kind of like they got let off the reins. So not only do we have discipline on how to run everything, how to keep everybody in check, but we also have this spirit that's allowed to be a little bit of free reign when it comes to innovative and ideas. So it's a melding. I think, that works really well. But it also is scary.
Yeah.
Because you got a million innovators now out there that know how to shoot.
Yeah, I think I was just gonna say that's one of the fundamental aspects. I think I was having a conversation with my friends about this. One of the beautiful things about freedom in general is that scary aspect of it, and how crazy you have to be like, all right, so everybody gets to go do what they want.
Right.
And it might come back and be the wrong, I might be wrong, I might be kicked out, all that kind of stuff. But it's like just giving people that kind of freedom so they can go out and go start innovating. That's where the real genius starts to come from. And I think there's an interesting thing there of, how do you as a business or as a leader allow that freedom and that culture of freedom where you're allowing people to go out and innovate, but with, staying people relatively on task where we're still working, in the same general direction at least.
It's a challenge because you really don't want to stifle your team because you want the team to feel that they've got enough freedom to do what they need to. And it really comes back to, you want to go back to, as a senior leader, you go back to your fundamentals of, let me rephrase it. I know what I go back to, a lot of the fundamentals of my leadership process. And when I say that is, I'll put it in a Navy term and I'll bring it, and then I'll turn around and bring it. So when Navy term, when I'm there, I'm trusting my lieutenants, I'm trusting my JGs, I'm trusting my ensigns, I'm trusting my chiefs, I'm trusting my senior chiefs. And just, those are your E7s and E8s against your O1s through O3s. And let them run. Let them do what they need to, let them manage appropriately. Because as a senior leader, my job is to remove barriers. Also defend. So you're defending when somebody comes in, especially old school, that goes in and says, I don't want it done that way. And I go in and say, respectfully, it's not your unit. You're not in charge. This is my unit. You're in charge. My process is to give you all my updates, make sure everybody's mission ready. There's nobody in jail. There's nobody under NJP or court martial, and is meeting all your requirements and going through. Allow me to do my job. Do not stay out of, keep your microwave out of my kitchen. In that same process, I go and bring, I bring to my corporal. For me, I don't have chiefs. Some days I really wish I had a chief. Mostly I just have my directors. I leave my directors run their aspects the way they need to. And I'm sure, Otis, you can almost want to say the same thing of dealing with your sergeants, your staff sergeants, your master sergeants, your, I don't know, whatever sergeant. You got more sergeants in the Army than I know to do it. I truly love the breakout in the Navy. It's 3-3-3, bang. That's all it is. Don't talk to me about anybody else, because we operate in groups. You have nothing to E2 to E3. You got E3 to E6. You got E6 to E9. You got O1 to O3. Then you go field office, O4 to 06. Then you're a GO, you're a GO, which is 07 on to whoever wants to go that high. Have at it, because you're way more brave than I am. Because I wouldn't want to walk into Congress and try and give any type of requirements in action. Craziness, especially today. I completely went off on the rails there. I apologize.
That's funny though, because it's only easy because that's all you ever learned. So
yeah, that's all. Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. And I was like, I talk to to tell you the truth, I really don't talk to even Marine Corps. I don't even really talk about how their structure runs. I mean, the Navy in itself is a separate structure into itself. You guys, the other three branches, it all kind of blends together on what the separation is. But bringing the conversation back, allowing the entrepreneurship within each one of those groups and areas and thought process. That's how I have found that our organization grows, because one of the things that most importantly is I, as an executive leader, force the organizations to call the individual division, call them divisions to match up to Army stuff. I force them to integrate. I force them to interact. There is no my group, his group, her group, their group. It's our company, our execution. but those areas in which you connect and talk to and require information or task or item to be accomplished, you do it, or as my director of marketing would say, you receive the wrath of dad. I hate that construct, but it really is. My job is to face this way, not have to turn around and face that way.
No, that's a great point, because as that chief leader, the CEO, the president, whatever, the guy who created the vision, you have to maintain the vision, and that is so true. And I just wanted to jump back to what you were talking about, is trusting your team to perform, and because what I came up with something a couple of years ago to coin it into a phrase. I call it the trust triad of leadership. Because as a leader, you got to trust yourself, you got to trust your team to perform, and then the third leg is that team has to trust that you are going to do what you say you're going to do. You're going to do it with their best interest in mind. So right. You get that quick triad, a nice, easy way to remember it. Trust yourself, trust your team, and then they trust you in that two-way street. So that's awesome that you're doing that. And that's, I mean, quite frankly, that's the only way you can be successful in a business and continue to have your business grow.
It's the only way for you to scale a business. Because the difference between a company and an organization, and notice I'm making a distinction. You say no, they're the same thing. A company is a name of Joe Blow, Seamus Schmuckatelli, whoever, and it's him or her, and that's all it is. Whereas a corporation is, it's a we, it's an us, it's a group. And the other thing is I'm going to go back to years of military. Everybody's expendable, including me. Everybody replaceable, including me. So if I'm going to do that, then I can't be the center of focus. I cannot be the center of the attention. I cannot be the only person that has an answer. I'm not the only person that's got a drive. I'm not the only one that's got a vision. I'm not the only one that's got fill in the blank. If you do it as a corporation where you trust your team, you get to take a vacation, take 2 weeks, let your mind go, because the team's got the vision. They've got the drive. They know what the direction is. It makes things easy.
Well, and I think that's where you really are, the old adage that, man, I hear it damn near every day, feels like, is it, from clients to just other people I talk to, is working on your business instead of in your business. As a leader, I mean, and even in the military, we did the same things. We could step away. We could go on leave. We could take vacation. In business world, we can take vacation. And if you cannot take vacation because you're afraid of what will happen to your business, then you need to really take a close look at yourself and how you act and how you've structured your business. Because if it all relies on your personal interaction, going back to what you said earlier, you can never scale. If you're the only one that can do this, this, and this, if you're the only one that has the key to open the front door to let everybody in the office in the morning because you don't trust them to close up or whatever weird sort of shop thing you got going on in your head, man, well, first off, you ain't getting no time off.
Right.
Second, your business ain't going to scale and you ain't going to have any loyalty with your people. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit, because we touched on it, and it's a big buzzword. It's the I word, right? That's the buzzword. That's the military, and they put, innovation, catch you on the ball. But it's in proposals or requests for proposals. Must be innovative. Must do this. Innovate. How do you innovate your processes? And I'm doing the buzzword thing just for shits and giggles, so pardon me.
Do we need to pull an acronym list on that? I want the new buzz on the buzzword. Go ahead. I apologize. I didn't interrupt. But yeah, okay, go ahead.
But how do you, with your team, because you're focused on the biggest bureaucracy in the U.S., really. Right. I mean, how do you, as your team, continue to innovate the way that you support the creation of, I guess, efficiencies and effectiveness of the organizations you're supporting. Did I put that in a good sense? I feel like I danced around.
You're in the realm. I'll try and clean it up a little bit. So for us, it's not just the federal side that we support: city, county, state, and First Nations. So we handle really what you would say is within the. Can't really even say the continental because we've got a good amount of internationals. You don't know how really the best way of innovating is? Ask your customers. Ask your customers what they're running into. Ask your customers what they're doing. For us, we ask our customers not just what they're doing, but also, because all these organizations are really government agencies, we ask them if they share their playbooks. Case in point, City of Seattle, Washington, Park and Rec came up with a fantastic playbook on how to make things more efficient for the constituents of the city of Seattle. Would you like to know what organization came out of nowhere and asked for a copy of that playbook? National Park Service. The biggest park system in the United States was looking at the playbook and said, oh my God, there's so many items in there we could actually implement. We had never thought about. We never even realized. Bureau of Land Management started saying, we can't use the entire item, but there's like 60 or 80% of this thing that we actually have a value on. Now, am I grabbing their playbook and bringing it in as part of my innovation? No. But what I am doing is saying, okay, those items that I can see that are part of items that I would want to make sure that are part of our trainings, I am asking and grabbing some of that information. I am modifying some of the items that are there. Not only that, I'm taking items that were part of one-off conversations and saying to my fellows, the trainers, what if we did fill in the blank? It literally was a 3-word item that has now become an entire section of one of our training aspects because I asked our customers, not just me. Fellows ask it in the trainings. Consulting team asks it to when we're talking to people. Wait, it's not about me. It's them. They're driving it. They're realizing it. Because why would you take an organization of 10, 20, 30, 50 when you can have access to thousands? Because every one conversation has a minimum of 10 people that you're going to actually is going to have an impact on. So if I have a conversation with you, you're going to remember a portion of a conversation you had with one of 10 people, which may have been a conversation of one of 10 people, which may have turned into a conversation of one of 10 people. In the world, you can actually touch anybody on this planet in 7 degrees. I mean, 7 people you talk to, I can get from you to the president of Kuala Lumpur in 7 people.
There's a country I would not have picked out as an example of that, but okay.
Well, what I'm saying is it's an obscure, way out, no way. Because the president of the United States for me is about 3 people out. If I really truly wanted to go talk to Biden.
Yep.
Sidetracked, not letting it happen. You and I had this conversation. Will not bring in my political views, but it's possible to get to that office based on who we've got, what we're doing, and things like that. But if we're talking about, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so I wanted to chase the innovation rabbit because I got a lot of things going on that right now. Because what you're talking about, with these like orders of connection, is one of the fundamental aspects for like innovation. When you actually, because there's this whole science and business of innovation, of going and trying to measure it, see how to create it. Innovation has gotten like I think it's like 10 times more expensive on average for a new idea over the last 30 years or something like that. But innovation is a really difficult thing to do when you're looking for it. It's kind of an interesting thing like that. And
thing is
I think no, please go ahead.
The one thing about innovation, though, is the only reason why it costs more today than it did 30 years ago is the verification, validation, and association for what you're trying to achieve. Innovation, a lot of times before, is, say, Tesla. Tesla came up with an idea for AC. He had no validation anybody needed it. He had no validation of the actual utilization of it, and he had no idea whether or not it was sustainable. The reason why it's so expensive now is we actually go through that process of making sure the who, the what, the when, and the where before we start building the how.
Right.
So I get what you're saying, that it's more.
I think our points coming together there, because what I was building to is where I think a lot of the real innovation comes from is when you remove those kind of constraints, because you start, we call them like garage innovators, the people who have a problem in their backyard and they figure out that if they put this piece of metal on the right angle on their lawnmower, the problem is gone. And so what I think is so interesting with that is that you can find that small scale innovation. And then the real thing there, the real step that, and the reason I got so excited about this is what you were saying, same type of thing about the cities with the Borough of Land Management and all of that, is sharing your playbook. How do we get the garage innovation to that next level without people hoarding their information, without people getting too selfish on it, and without, shutting things down? And I think it's, you have a really interesting perspective on this from the, more bureaucratic government side of things, of how do you get people to collaborate on that? Because there's one real aspect of, we're talking about with different government levels there. You've worked, like you said, you've worked with many different levels. When we talk about federal government, there's a lot more rigidity there than you would get with smaller ones. And so you get that same type of garage innovation. So I'm really curious, how can you try to, build that culture up?
See, in our case, the way in which government agencies, especially in our community as a whole, they're more interested in how it improves what's going on, and then also sharing it. One of the things is that government agencies as a whole, the innovation they believe, the members believe, they don't actually own it. Corporation has the thought process. All right, let me take for example, my watch. Samsung S3, fantastic piece of technology. Everything in here is an innovative technology that Samsung had to put money out to, and corporate money. Whereas on a city standpoint, the people put the money into the innovation itself. The members, their brain power is what the city paid those members to come up with. As such, this is the people's product. And as much as you may go and think, and most people would want to say, well, government only thinks about themselves. They only think about that aspect. Last I heard, we in the United States, that lovely flag to your right, Cameron, is of the people, for the people, about the people. And at the lower levels, specifically, First Nations, cities, counties, states, that mentality is strongest as it possibly can be. Now, is there going to be a crap load of rivalry? Yes. Welcome to Hawaii. Welcome to Ohio versus Texas A&M.
Yep.
There's no love lost between the two of them, except in how to take care of their citizens. And they will share heavily. There will be a lot of razzing in between about the two schools, but for the most part, they will share. Do they want to keep their name off it? This is a product of? Yes, because to them, they want to be recognized. And we, as a central hub of that, Performance Institute as a group, as a whole, treats that with full respect. Yes, this came from the city of Seattle Park and Rec. Yes, this came from city of San Luis Obispo. This came from the state of Wisconsin. This came from, yes, our job, the Performance Institute's job, to help create and add that innovation is to make sure that these organizations are recognized for their value and their innovation as they move forward. That's a huge item. And it gives them bragging rights.
And if you give the city the bragging rights, you give the people the bragging rights. That's that next step there. Oh yeah. And then you get, I'm sitting around going, hey, Tucson changed the way everybody does their traffic lights or whatever it is. Like that's a pretty freaking cool thing.
Or Tucson changed up to the latest LEDs. So the traffic lights didn't change, but they dropped their electrical cost by 25%. And I'm like, wait. I need to go, whose name is on this? Whose director is this? I need to go talk to them. I need 25% of my money put back in my pocket because my budget's shrinking because of freaking COVID sucks. So that was my
well, and then all of us in Tucson can be proud of our LED lights. And I can, every time I talk to Otis up there in Colorado, I could point out how they don't have their LED lights yet. So I think there's a really interesting thing there about how you can build, reorganize the incentive structure to get ownership over that innovation, so the people in power can take that little bit of ownership, get that pride point, and then you could share that with the rest of the people too. I think that's a pretty awesome thing.
And we try our best. There was actually a couple of programs where cities and counties are actually giving the individual in corporations and for accounts payable, if they are able to reduce the actual amount of outgoing cost or payment on a particular item, they receive a percentage of that cost savings. So changed up or added in the LED lights reduced by 25%. Great. That equated into, that savings was $1.3 million. As such, you're going to receive 1% for 1 year. Okay, that's a huge value. Not only did you pay me, that we reduce the cost by this, but you're going to give me $100,000 because I gave you that much innovation. Yeah, let me find news. Let me find other ways to do that. Our process is there's a 9-step process, and we can drop this down to 3 by innovating, by throwing in these 2 items. Wow, and we see that. We see, and we, specifically Performance Institute as a whole, helps organizations realize how to strategically plan and how to manage their process, which then goes in and creates the innovation, creates the savings, creates the overall joy of being at work. I reduced 2/3 of my team's workload. We're not 6 months behind in applications now. Now we're running a month behind, and I can work with them, and people are happier, and they're not overloaded, and they're not stressed.
There's your purpose fastball, Dad.
Yeah, well, and they're still employed.
Well, I want to just something I heard this morning. I was at a breakfast, executive forum breakfast, and one of the guys on the panel said something that's right in that line. I think it's such a really interesting perspective. He was talking, and I'll just kind of quickly frame it, but he was talking about with his organization and incentivizing folks and things like that to retain talent. And he says he's got a team of 5, and one of the guys from that team of 5 comes and says, "Hey, I need a salary increase of X, 25%. Not just we're not talking cost of living, we're talking about a jump." Right. And he said, "Well, if you can find that someplace else, good on you, but I can't give that to you here." So the guy leaves. He's got 4 people left.
Leaves the organization?
Yeah, he leaves the organization. Okay. Yeah, leaves the organization. So what he did and does is he took those other 4 guys. He found this is really kind of interesting. He took those other 4 guys, sat down with them and said, "Hey, Bob's gone. I'd like for you 4 to pick up the extra, and I'm going to incentivize you for the next 90 days till I can hire somebody. And they went from doing, I think it was something along the lines of like, they went from doing 25 files a day or whatever it was
Mhm.
to 33 each. And they were all happier, more engaged, and felt rewarded. And they were monetarily rewarded for the extra work.
Right.
And he ended up not backfilling Bob. Bob was gone. And
Right.
and the team is happier and performing better. And it's just as I listened to him and I talked to him afterwards and thought about that, going back to our I word that's become the theme for today. That is truly innovating, because now not only are those 4 people making more, I mean, they're getting
Right.
more in their bank account, they're happier. They're not happier because they're getting more in their bank account. They're happier because that secret sauce that everybody forgets about, they are value added to the organization. They feel that contribution, and their contribution is worthy.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what popped into my head as you were telling that story.
You can never ever replace the feeling of actually showing, of being able to stand there and show your, not just your value, but your contribution. There was a guy I knew that had been doing construction for like 35 years. He loved going to work every single day. He was a framer. You're like, that's got to be the worst job. It's backbreaking. It's this, it's that, and the other. And he goes, no. The guy gets to go in and walk in on a barren piece of land, nothing but a concrete slab, because they usually roll in about 15 seconds after the concrete's been laid down, and they start putting up walls. And at the end of the day, if the comment he made is, at the end of the day, if they don't have the first floor done and every piece of laid concrete that day, they stay after. And I go, why? He goes, the joy of watching you go from nothing to something is more rewarding than the dollars we take home. Now, the boss always goes in and shows up with 3 cases of beer at the end of the day, but that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it because he likes to go on a show where he went from nothing to something, and it's an immediate gratification.
Mm-hmm.
I think, to be quite frank, if you bring it back to the First Nations, the cities, the states, the counties, and the states, they like to see where they can show, and that's why business intelligence and analytics and reporting, some people take that as you're pushing that against me. The problem is that's the small 3 to 5% of people saying you're just watching everything I do. The rest of them are looking at, Bobby, be quiet in the corner. I'm watching us go from 1% to 6% to 9% on our improvements. I'm watching the number of complaints that went at 28% down to 4%. I'm seeing what we're doing good here. I've got people happier. I've got product going out, and I can see where the stress level that we had, that everybody's screaming, bitching, moaning, yelling, we're not doing our jobs. We can actually numerically state, not only doing our job, we're doing our job well. Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about how much more money you're going to get.
Well, I want to go to something I've always been curious about with everybody on our show, particularly the veterans. What's the one life lesson, core lesson that you've taken from the Navy, your time in the Navy, both enlisted and officer, and still rely on to this day in the business world?
Trust your people. Your people are never out to get you. Trust your people. Get their advice. Talk to them. Because the moment you don't is the day everything comes apart. Learn that one the hard way. Also got screwed off that same process. You've got to measure it both ways. Do not go blind.
Well, that's my corollary question then. what went wrong? You know, if that's your go-to, but then you got burned with your go-to within
I
your
got burned once.
yeah.
I got burned once. In 20 years, I get burned once. I'll take the
That's-
torch and move on.
Yep, that is pretty damn good.
So what happened? How did that happen? So we can have that lesson to identify it. What are the indicators at least?
I didn't recognize the personal level intrusion in the work world.
Hmm. Interesting.
The individual was going through something personally, and I didn't pay enough attention to the key indicators that said, I need to want to separate this person out. I need to find out what I need to do. We need to help them figure out what they have, what the problem is, understanding that issue. Because as much as you are leading a company, you're leading individuals first. Because if you take care of the people, the company is going to take care of. The moment you forget, there are three things that run a company: innovation, people, money. The innovation will always be there. The people will come and go. The money will grow. If you let go of any leg on that three-legged stool, the money goes away, the people go away, the innovation goes away. You got nothing left. Same thing when you're running, when you have, so when you do not recognize people as a resource, as an asset, as a value, you've given up everything. You've gone from a we to a me and to an I, and I do not intend on staying an I in my entire life.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of my NCOs taught me this years ago. People first, mission first, people always. Mission first, people always, because, you can't do one without the other, and you can't do the other without the one. I mean, it's, you can't accomplish a mission unless you have people, and then the people have to have a reason to be there and part of that mission. So
there's a lieutenant colonel that does these TikToks. His name is Lieutenant Colonel Dirk. He's out there. His main conversation is he's just trying to control the E4 mafia. But the problem is that the management conversations that he has cross way more than just a single E4 group of E4 mafias. And just so you know, he's an Army. He's Army. He's a Louisiana National Guard.
Okay.
He is a great speaker. But he truly communicates that same aspect. It's not that he's trying to. It's not that he's beating up on the E4 mafia, but it's more along the lines of making sure that the E4 mafia realizes, in a broader standpoint, it's not about what they do and how they act has a great value on everybody around them. And if you think about it from that standpoint, that means that everybody at every level has a value to the group in which the groups that are on both sides of them, both in front and behind. Going back to your point, it's not about me. It's not about them. It's about us.
That's right. That's right.
One thing I love about it, to be quite frank, though, is one thing that one of the small things that I've ever heard is Baghdad, 2009. Admirals were doing this. The admiral is making fun. General Lowe is in the building. We're in the Pentagon. The admiral, there was a Navy admiral came up, stood there in the main center. O's office is within hearing distance, and he's decided he's going to go on and rag on the Army for the Army-Navy game. But so he gathered all of the freaking Navy personnel around there. So we're like, there's about 45 or 50 of us. Around the outside, the Air Force guys started figuring out what the hell is this sound going on, because they're always in a chair anyways. And the Army guys come out and saying, "Hey, we've got work to do. Why are you being so noisy?" But at the end of this, an O comes to the office, jumps to the end of his door. He's just sitting there looking at this. He's just looking at it. He stops and he goes, and one thing he's talking to the Navy guys. The last thing to keep in mind is, no matter what, this uniform is big, beautiful, and in some cases ugly and comfortable, still has the two best letters in the world. Us. US can stand for a lot of things, but it's us. And anytime you run a company, run an organization, run a unit, and you keep that piece of information clearly in your mind all the time, you always win. Sorry.
No. I just got one thing that I'm curious about, because one of the things that I do is I work with a lot of soon-to-be vets or vets that are in transition, and half, several of them are entrepreneurs. What's a vet entrepreneur lesson, package you say, hey, been there, done that, fellas, watch this or use this, rely on that, whatever?
That's a good, solid question. First and foremost, think about what makes you happy. One of the things for me that's always been is I'm an analyst at heart. And as such, I love playing with numbers. I know how to go in and put together everything from business plan and what the financials look like, walking through that, to how to go in and address how to analyze for metrics as well as dashboards and things like that. Those area to me is analytics. I've got a retired Air Force staff sergeant. He loves just tweaking the crap out of metal. Blacksmith is what he decided to be. He makes the most beautiful swords, beautiful knives you've ever seen. He's out of, in case you want to know, he run, Dragon's Lair. This is a plug. Dragon's Lair. He's out of Picayune, Mississippi. He started doing Renaissance fairs.
Oh.
Find that thing that makes you happy. If it's doing paintings like the guy that used to be on PBS, Bob Ross, do that. We've already been through, especially if you've been like I have been in the last 20 years, most, if not all of us, have been to hell. We've gone through the suffering, we've gone through the pain. We've already paid our dues on those steps. Find the joy, because the joy will allow you to enjoy your job, enjoy your life, because it's not a job anymore. It's a passion you just happen to get paid for. That's the best I can give you, brother, because I half the time look at franchises and I'm like, I don't have the slightest clue why a vet would even go near any of these guys. But then again, if HVAC is your passion, I've got no better answer for you on that one. If you want to be a Subway, grab a Subway franchise and make sandwiches, that's fine too.
Yeah.
But think about what you want to do in your life before you decide to jump into the first thing that shows up. Take a year. Just figure it out. Because that's the next phase when we're done being vets. When we're in vets is because we're done with that phase. That passionate desire to be called to service.
Yeah. That's great advice. I appreciate that. That's a good one.
I got one military, quasi-military question that I wanted to throw out to the two of you. And it's one of those that when this popped up early in the episode, I wrote it down because I'm amazed we haven't had this discussion. But Jeffrey, you were talking about, like the mandatory waiting period as you were going up, getting the referrals and those type of things.
Yeah.
I know that's not the right term. Yeah, soupy. I'm around the military stuff. I don't get all the terms right. But that mandatory waiting period, I think, is a super interesting thing, because obviously you got some people who you could fast track right to the top. It's the kid out of college who would make a great CEO. Like there's those type of examples, but also you have to learn along the way. So
Correct.
would you guys say that mandatory waiting period is in general good or bad? How would you adjust? Like, is there like you got to spend at least a month doing every job type thing? I want to hear both of your takes, Army and Navy, on that. Jeff, you can go first.
So I'm going to say no. The fast advancement is not best because, and I'm going to put it in the most easiest thing.
Mm-hmm.
In the Navy, I've seen members start from 0 to chief in a little bit under 10 years. The problem, though, is take an 18-year-old who's gone from 0 to chief in 10 years. That means they're 28 years old. They don't really have any life experience, in my opinion. They haven't been through their first divorce. As a chief, it seems to be a normal. 2, they don't even really have proper seasoning on their chief mug, which is, again, and I'm pretty sure Otis is going to say, yeah, sergeants have to have that same thing. 3, the knowledge expectation of what the members are and what they learn is too little. This is why, and I'll take it now to an officer standpoint. When you've got that brand new graduate out of the academy and they seem to know everything, and you're like, dude, I got bristles on my face that are older than you, and you're going to try and tell me how to do an actual job that I have been doing for a serious amount of time. I think that's probably why ensigns and JGs in the Navy always seem to find the master chief seems to be their key person. Not because the master chief will tell them to pound sand, but more along the lines of master chief can guide them and pull their leash to bring them back and say, you need to chill for a second, respectfully, sir. As a lieutenant commander, I used to go in and get handed all the mentorees just out of that phase. And that's because I'm a little gruff. I'm a lot rough. I've been there multiple times, but also I transitioned. Chiefs always found it funny is the fact that I'd be sitting in a conversation with them and talking more like a chief than I do an officer. And that's because I was freaking enlisted first. Mm. So again, fast advancement, as much as I hate the fact that, as that guy walking up through there, especially since the Army would do, the Navy goes 2, 2, 2. 2 years as enlisted, 2 years as a lieutenant JG, and then 2 years to an 03. Whereas the Army, and Otis, you're going to have to correct me, it's 1.5, 1.5, but then you go 5 till you get till you hit major. So you'll have to correct that one. But should we wait? Should we keep those same tactics, that same length? Yeah. Should we also at the same time, in my opinion, let those people off their leash to, if you can get them out of the power hungry, my evil plan will now start, and get them into, I have an innovative ideas, I want to make some changes and make some adjustments, but without breaking the system, have at it. But I've yet to see where you're kind of like, hey, I'm an officer. You have to listen to what I say. Sorry. Go ahead, Otis.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. There's a reason that timeline is in there, and the reason is life experience. I mean, yeah, are there some people that are be successful if they jumped? Would somebody jump? A 22-year-old, 2-star admiral? Would that guy be successful?
No, I don't think so.
Maybe there's 1 in 10 billion.
Right.
Sort of thing. But there's not enough probability that those time periods, there's a reason for those time periods. And so you can build that experience, because the experience gives you the tools to make better decisions when you have more responsibility. And that's what it all boils down to, and is I make a heck of a lot better decisions today than I did 30 years ago, because I understand processes and I can see implications and second and third order effects and fourth and fifth orders of effect. 30 years ago, I may see one other thing. If we do this, I might see one other thing, maybe a second thing. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for spending some time on the road, if you will.
Is the underlying aspect?
Cameron, I got an outline
go ahead.
on this because there's one other thing that I forgot. Relationships. If I've been in here a minute, I don't have a guy that I went to officer candidate school 8 years ago, who's basically at my side, my same level on the other side of the country, that I may need to go in and say, Otis, I need a favor, brother. I need X, Y, Z. Can you help me out? And Otis say, yeah, I still owe you 3 beers from that time. We went and did this, that, or the other, because there's a relationship there. And so that's the other thing, Cam, that's very, very important as you roll through the ranks. If you jump up that level, you don't have that connection of being in the same place at the same time through the same process. Sorry, Cam, go ahead and throw in your last.
No, I love that, because that paints a really interesting picture of it. And I think it paints a much more correct picture. Because what I was going to say was, I think one of the aspects is almost that it's hard to test experience, isn't it? You know, it's one of those things. Like I could say this. I'm sitting here, 25 years old, about to get married. Ideally for the only time. Thanks for that for that one, Jeffrey. That's not going to be a test that I want to go through. But there's when you look at it
too, and under that pressure, it's a different ride.
Exactly. So. Well, that's one of the things. To become a chief, you got to go through that 6-month divorce training, right?
It's a longer period than that, but go ahead.
But I think it's an interesting thing of how it's hard to test for that experience, and that's why you wind up with these kind of structures. The relationships is a great point to add on to this, but I still think there's something to that it's hard to test for that experience and to show if you actually know what the heck you're talking about. And so instead, you got to wait a year for it. You got to wait 2 years for it and move forward that way. So thanks for that. I think that was a good discussion. I'm surprised that I haven't asked that question before.
I'm glad you've done innovation. You've found a new process. Yep. through an off the cuff conversation. You found an innovative idea that you'll now throw out to your group and your departments and have them create the actual solution for that innovation. Excellent. We've now gone full circle.
There we go. Full circle. Right to you, Dad.
That's great. And I'm going to shift us to my favorite part of what'd you learn, and for me, I'm going to go back to something you said early on that really caught my interest. I thought was kind of that in the foot stomping mode, not in the, oh my God, watershed mode, but in that yeah, and it's that business world is seeing the innovation that vets can bring. So you get discipline and you get innovation. I think there's that knowledge, that the fact that is becoming more prevalent out there, I think it's huge, because there is the school of thought that every vet has PTS and can only think in line and can only do what they're told, and that's just so wrong, because you and I both know, you get told to do something and you just figure out how to do it. Nobody tells you how to do it. You got to figure it out, and there's innovation right there in that. So I think that was really a neat thing to remind. And I say it again, just so people that are listening can hear that the vets that are coming to you, the vets that are looking for those jobs, they're disciplined. So they're going to be there and support and be part of that team. And they're also going to have some great ways of innovating and creating solutions that you probably never thought of.
One of the other things to keep in mind is tenacious.
Yeah.
We don't give up. We've never had. There is no, the joke multiple years ago was you hit the easy button. Yeah. We don't have an easy button, but because we don't have a give up button. We have a mission accomplishment button. We have I got to get to here, I got to get to there, and I got to bring 30 people along the way. Let's figure out how we're going to get there. But there's no can't do. It's more like, how are we going to do it?
Yeah. Camden, what'd you learn?
So I'm going to stop myself from going down the rabbit hole on this too much because this got me really freaking excited, and I just wrote it down. This might have to be a whole episode. We'll do a special, Dad, because mission first, people always. You've said that you just so many times in the show. We've talked about all these different aspects. I just had this light bulb moment comparing that to a lot of the economic stuff I studied. Because you look at old economics, what people think of as like the scary capitalism, all that kind of stuff, it doesn't think about people. It's always like, it's always the money is how people think about it. And then there's this coming from the modern perspective on that, it's like so laughable to me because it's like, obviously there's people. Like it's the type of thing where when you're going through, in 2020 and you're learning economics, you're like, well, yeah, obviously people matter. People should probably eat food. If this solution doesn't give people food, then it's not a good solution. And I think that mission first, people always is such a great way of representing that. Mission first, because it is about, giving scarce resources to the most people possible and giving the best outcomes that we can. But then it's people always, because if the outcome ignores people, then it's not a good outcome. And so that was just such a huge light bulb moment for me. We'll have to do a whole special on that, Dad, because I think that just really defines that turning point for economics towards this people conscious, we've talked about it before, of conscious capitalism, that type of thing, where people do matter, people always matter. And so thank you for that. That was a huge moment for me.
Awesome. Jeff, what'd you learn?
I learned that people are actually still interested in understanding how to help others. It's one of those things you kind of go in and think, do they actually do it? But no. Based on, I learned how people really this whole thing, this whole process, this conversation, it's about helping people. It's about helping not just people, but vets and what they want to do. And hopefully with any luck, it's helping others realize what the vet community can bring to any organization.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
That's what we're here for.
How can folks get in touch with you and learn more about Performance Institute? What's the best way to do that?
So our website is performanceinstitute.org. That would probably be the best starting point for them to connect up with us. You can actually put in a Google search just on Performance Institute as a whole, and you'll pull up our website and it'll have a plethora of information. A large amount of our training is already listed out there, as well as a lot of the organizations we engage with and who we help. So you can also, as well as contact information, will be there for you to give a call.
That's great. Hey, Jeff, I really appreciate it, man. Appreciate your time today. It's been great, man. We went into some deep philosophical stuff, which I always enjoy. It was a fun show to talk to, and appreciate you sharing with us.
Gentlemen, I appreciate you even reaching out. It was nice to go and have a conversation with you. I hope that this helps at least somebody learn something. And last, if any of the city or county agencies are interested, let us know. We're in the process of putting together a community, and they can be able to jump in and take a look at all the playbooks which we've grabbed.
Awesome. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's show. Special thanks to our guest, Jeffrey Yefsky, for joining us today, and our sponsor, Tribe and Purpose. Find your tribe, find your purpose. You can check out a recent episode of The Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out a full archive at thecamandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. The Cam and Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.